Hi, everyone. Welcome back for another episode of Wellness Matters. I have been manifesting a guest like our guest today, so I'm so super excited to introduce him. I have wanted to have a dream interpreter on the podcast for I don't even know how long. So today, I'm so excited to introduce Dr. Michael Lennox. He is a psychologist, an astrologer, and an expert in dreams and dream interpretation, which is why I'm so super excited. He has appeared on Sci Fi, MTV, NBC, and countless radio shows and podcasts. Dr. Lennox has published articles in Today's Woman, TV Guide, Star, and many other magazines. He teaches classes in self investigation and hosts a weekly podcast called Conscious Embodiment, Astrology and Dreams. I'm totally going to be checking out that podcast because I was just reading that what you do is you have people come on. Well, you have people email in their dreams and you kind of interpret them with them.
Yeah. I do a dream interpretation in every episode of the podcast. Sometimes it's live with a dreamer that comes on. And if it's not live, we do an email dream. But yeah, it's one of those weird things where it's like, does astrology and dreams really blend? And it's like, in my body, it does. So my podcast has both because I do both.
I absolutely, positively love this, and I cannot wait to experience it. And I might stalk you a little bit with some dreams because I actually, I have frequent dreams. I really do. And so I'm super excited to like just dive in with you and figure out, you know, I'm super spiritual now. I really had a massive awakening in 2020. And like I've just been like on this fast pace life of understanding the things that we don't really see, you know, but with dreams, obviously there is some type of vision. So I'm super interested. I keep a dream journal and good. I'm not the best though. Sometimes I will write down a dream, like if it's really specific, and other times I'm like, I want to go have breakfast. So, you know, like, I don't know. I don't know. I've got all the questions. So we're just going to dive right in.
Let's dive in.
You have so many different hats. Like you're a therapist and you are an astrologer but also a dream interpreter. And I really want to kind of hone in on how in the world did you become kind of like this dream expert?
Well, it really did start in my childhood. Certainly being an imaginative kid who had a very vivid and active dream life. I loved my dreams since I was a little boy, and there was room in my family to talk about them. So that's what sort of started it. If I tell the whole story as it really played out, if Fiddler on the Roof and the Broadway show album of that musical really started it. And I'm not kidding. There's a dream sequence in the show, Fiddler on the Roof, and on the album, there's a little bit of the scene that they play out where the husband is having a dream. It turns out he's making the dream up, but he's sharing a dream, and his wife says to him, and it's on the album, "Tell me what you dreamed, and I'll tell you what it meant." And then the whole plot point of the show changes on this dream interpretation. But that phrase was a phrase that my 4, 5, 6, 7, 8-year-old boy heard over and over again anytime my mother played that album on a Saturday morning.
Get out.
Yeah. So cut to, I'm now 15. I'm spiritually curious. I'm excited about anything and everything that I'm learning or seeing out in the world. And Freud's interpretation of dreams came into my view. I stumbled upon this book. Now, I'm sure I was very like pseudo sophisticated, arrogant little kid reading Freud at 15. I don't know what I got out of reading the book outside of the definitive sense that dreams could be worked with and reveal things from the unconscious. And that excited me. And that translated to walking down the halls in high school and having kids say, "I had the craziest dream last night, and I just remembered Golda." And I would say, "Tell me what you dreamed, and I'll tell you what it meant." And so in my 16, 17-year-old body, I just spoke intuitively and extemporaneously based on what I heard when you told me your dream. Many years later, I discovered that I have a gift. I know how the gift works. My mind can work so fast as I'm listening to a dream that you'll tell me the story of the dream, which is just a story in the language of symbols.
Right.
Each symbol in the dream will have a universal meaning that most humans on the earth would agree that thing means this because of what it does or what its use is or what its essence is, right? So it's like, here, there's a pencil on my desk. If I pick up this pencil, everybody in the world will agree that this is a writing implement.
Right.
And it's erasable.
Right.
And everybody understands that. So now you've got the universal meaning of this object is my capacity to express myself, but in a manner that I can edit or alter. Now,
Wow. Yeah.
I don't, right, to make sense, right?
Right.
Now, the gift isn't that I knew that and you didn't. The gift for me is that I can do this so fast that while I'm hearing the crazy story of the dream you're telling me, my mind is filling in another story about the story.
You're decoding.
That's right. And it's like at 16, I didn't know that that's what I was doing, but I do know that every teenager that I spoke to about their dream widened their eyes and said, oh my God, that's so fascinating, or that makes sense. And I'll also share this, Heather. Those interactions where someone's looking at me going, you're so interesting. Well, I love that. I mean,
of course.
I'm a Leo sun, honey. It's like me. You give me a little applause, baby, and I will shine even brighter.
Oh my
So
goodness.
I chased that experience. And even though my role as a spiritual teacher didn't really emerge until my midlife, I got my doctorate in my late 30s, and the business I'm in now started at around 40. By the time I was 28, 29 years old, living in Los Angeles, I was holding workshops in yoga studios because this is a town you can hang a shingle and say, I do this, and people will be like, all right.
Yes.
Yeah. So even though I had this other career on the business side of the entertainment industry, on the side, I was always studying, seeking, healing shame and trauma, exploring and expanding my intuitive gifts, and working with dreamers on a regular basis. I had my first paying client for dream interpretation when I was 28, 29 years old.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah. And then astrology sort of came next. And, I think I bought my first deck of tarot cards at 17 years old, right? So I was always in that world from the time I was a teenager, but it was right there in sort of my mid 30s. I had a little crisis. There was a breakup, and, and nothing like a breakup to get you started in a new direction. And I thought, I don't necessarily want to be a psychotherapist as a career, but I know that the way I want to help people, I need to know more. I don't want to be just a spiritual woo-woo guy talking about dreams and spirit and intuition. I wanted to know what science knows about human behavior, about the brain and brain chemistry. So I threw myself into grad school, and that's what sort of coalesced my life's work into devoting all of my time to a spiritual teacher sort of career, which started about 25 years ago.
And you just didn't have enough to do, so you wanted to become an author? You wanted to be an author too?
I love to write. I've been writing since I was a kid. I remember writing short stories in first grade and getting a little star, for, my capacity to put words together. So words are definitely sort of my thing. I love writing and have always been writing. So it was natural for me to want to write about my most passionate subject. So my first book was about dreams, and it was about this universality that I was talking about. Right. Because I felt, well, if I do this thing and I'm going to teach others sort of how I do it, I, need to people to understand this principle of there's meaning behind objects and even animal medicine. It's a very popular to include sort of, a First Nation sense of, lifting up animals as having powerful medicine and sacred sort of totem energy. Right. Well, but it's not like this isn't fucking rocket science. The quality of the medicine of the animal is based on the behavior of the animal. Hawks bring us vantage point because they fly high. Bears are about strength that doesn't need to be sort of exploded into the room because they know their power, and they also respect hibernation, the need to rest. right? So that's bear medicine. It's because of what bears do.
What about a
So
skunk?
that's an interesting, what do
Because I
skunks
had
really
one.
know about, right? They have that smell. They secrete that smell in their glands that everybody knows, like skunk smell. But
Right.
when do they spray?
When they're afraid.
Yes. So the medicine of skunk is to sort of honor and acknowledge that fear and a fear response is as sacred in our psyche as sort of the higher vibrational ways of being in the world. So that if skunk comes along in a dream or in your sort of waking life experience, something about fear is up for consideration.
Okay. Yeah, that was like 2 months ago. I had a dream that like a skunk landed on me and my aunt was with me, but she ran away because she was afraid of the skunk. I'm like, you're just going to leave this on me? And that was the dream. But yeah, there's definitely a skunk.
Yeah, and so I would behold a dream with a skunk in it, with that in my mind, and so I might ask prompting questions of
Yeah.
you.
What am I
Like,
afraid
oh
of?
God, what are you afraid of in the moment? How does your aunt connect to fear consciousness if she
Mm,
does?
okay. Okay, so your first book, I don't have it. I have your recent book, Psychic Dreamer.
Yeah.
But your first book, was it more like a dictionary type?
Well, it does have terms in the book as part of it,
Yeah.
but like 250 of them. It's not designed to be a resource. And
Okay.
all of the terms that are in Dream Sight are like 200 words long. It's designed to teach. So the term
Oh,
part, the dictionary part in Dream Sight isn't something you would go to have a dream. It is listing out a handful of terms and trying to train people's muscle for recognizing universality. The Dream Dictionary, though, is my second book, and that's just a straight reference. Llewellyn's Guide,
oh, okay, that one was
Llewellyn's
okay.
Complete. There we go. It's my publisher is Llewellyn, so two of my books are just Llewellyn brand books, like Llewellyn's Complete Dictionary of Dreams, right? Uh,
Yes.
that's just a straight reference that you keep by your bedside. That's got like 1,200 terms in it that I've identified the universal meaning in exactly the way I've been describing.
Yeah,
Um,
because I was going to ask you, okay, could you give us like 10 really basic, because in your dream, Psychic Dreamer, I was reading it the other night and I earmarked a spot where it talked about how water, if water shows up in your dream, it's emotions, right?
Yeah, you can think of us as human beings as sort of being divided into our rational consciousness and our irrational or emotional consciousness, right?
Yeah,
There's a binary of that. Even our Earth has a binary of land and
in
ocean,
water.
right?
Yes.
So we have that as well. And so that the land consciousness is our bodies, our actions, and our doing, and water represents
Got
the
it.
conscious and the emotional currents that the land holds. So just like that happens on the earth, that's happening inside of each of us, that we are both land and
Yeah.
water. And so when we dream of water, then we're in the emotional, we're in the irrational, we're in the unconscious modalities. And so we're going to perceive a dream that has a lot of water in it as reflecting something that's going on with us emotionally.
Wow. Well, I was just talking to my son last night who's 15, but he's like 15 going on 30.
Mhm.
And he's also a Leo sun.
Fabulous.
And yeah, so we were sitting there talking. I was like telling him how I'm doing this podcast today with you and on the masculine and feminine energies you talked in there, or that binary idea of, so there's day, which would be the masculine,
That's right.
night would
Right.
be the feminine. But
In breath, out breath.
yes, I never really thought about dreaming as being the closest like catalyst to death, basically. So being
Yes.
alive would be the masculine and dying would be the feminine. So being awake would be the masculine and dreaming would be
That's
the
right.
feminine. And like it was like really just the way that you worded it in the book. It was like, holy shit, yes. And that's where I would think the veil is the thinnest between two worlds, right?
It's also where we're most powerfully creative when we can understand these binaries and work with them both simultaneously.
Yeah.
Just like the digital landscape, all you need is a one and a zero, And with that two pieces of consciousness, the digital landscape can create anything.
Yes.
That is as much a reflection of this binary as what we're talking about: day, night, up, down, in, out, sleep, wakefulness,
Awake.
and life/death. In fact,
Right.
I think that we practice our death every night we go to sleep,
Right.
because it is a release of the conscious awareness and the actions of the body in life. And then we go into this state where we are ostensibly dead. We're not moving. We're sort of, we look dead. If anybody was glancing in the room, wasn't close enough to hear us breathing. And there's also the notion that where we go in the dream state is into consciousness with a capital C, and
Right.
out of the mundane separated consciousness that we experience when we are awake. We
Right.
have to split off from this enormous existence that's happening in order to perceive it. We have to feel separate. We have to feel in our bodies so that we can look back at the world and say, I am, and that is, and we are. Right. But in the dream state, that sort of goes away. We're
Right.
more one with all possibility, the other layers of the veil, the other dimensions, places where people who have passed out of their bodies live, where visitation dreams happen.
Right.
One could posit that when we die, literally, when we physically leave our bodies, where we go might resemble the dream state way more than some heaven that's a super impression of Earth.
Right.
That the dream state is sometimes considered more like real than the waking life separation consciousness.
Okay. Why do some people, like, I hear all the time, because I have some crazy ass dreams. I really do. I wake up and I'm like, what was that? But when I have a really crazy dream, I'll tell people anywhere, oh my God, you should have heard about my dream. And then they'll say to me, I never have dreams. How is that possible that some people have them? Are they dreaming still? They just don't know it?
Absolutely. First of all, if they weren't dreaming, they'd be dead.
Okay.
Okay. So it would
They're
take a little
dreaming.
while. Well, here's the definitive answer to that, how we know that people are going through REM sleep, where dreams are vivid and active, and the typical dreaming is happening during that cycle.
Okay.
That's also the period in the sleep cycle where the brain is releasing metabolic waste. You see, all cells poop, right?
Right.
They're little factories, right? And they they create waste. We have a beautiful lymphatic system that funnels out all of that waste in the body below the brain. But that lymphatic system cannot affect the brain because the brain has to be protected by this blood-brain barrier, or we are too susceptible to all kinds of challenges and problems if the brain isn't like cut off from everything else.
Right.
So how the brain gets rid of its cell poop is that during REM sleep, all of the cells shrink a little bit and the cerebral spinal fluid gets a little fuller. And then as the cells sort of squeeze back up into their regular shape, they're shoving their metabolic waste into the cerebral spinal fluid, which then drains into the spinal column, into the physical body where the lymphatic system can take that stuff away. So your friend who says, I don't remember my dreams, has to be going through REM sleep and having dreams. Why some people easily remember them and others don't, I don't think we could possibly know that, but I hearken it to sense of direction, right?
Okay.
There are people who just innately have a sense of the direction that they're going in. And we call that, good sense of direction. And other people don't have that. They get lost. Well, why is what? I don't know why one person has a good sense of direction and somebody else doesn't. Oh, maybe science does know this, and I'm not a brain chemist, so I don't know. But it's like a function of wiring. I think some people are more wired to remember easily, and others just aren't.
Like more intuitive, maybe?
That's Possible. That's a bit of a judgment to say, well, it's an
Okay.
intuitive thing.
Right.
So the person who isn't naturally oriented to remember their dreams organically might never be inspired to pick up a journal, right? The minute you picked up your
Mm,
dream journal,
yeah.
your unconscious responded to that impulse by giving more dreams because the unconscious
True.
is that powerful. So the unexplored person who's never really vividly remembered a dream might not ever be moved to even have it occur to them to
True.
remember their dreams more. But
Yeah.
I do believe that anybody can remember their dreams more efficiently if they desire it. And there's some steps that you can take.
Yeah, that's what one of my questions. Well, actually, I want to go back to the brain poop. So, one way, I don't know if I heard it on a podcast or if I read it in a book. I don't know. I'm reading things all the time, and I swear somebody said, because it stuck with me, and it kind of makes sense that when we are living our daily life throughout the day, we aren't always processing emotions at that time, whatever, or like figuring things out, whatever. We're kind of just going through our day like survival mode. And then when you go to bed at night and you start dreaming, what I read or heard or something, it said something like the brain is kind of processing the things that we couldn't process during the day and kind of like working things out while you're sleeping. I don't know. Does that make sense?
Well, you're absolutely right, 100%.
Okay.
So now we have the second sort of structural purpose of what is occurring during REM. Right. So the first
Okay.
one we talked about, the metabolic waste being cleared out. The
Right.
second one can be understood fundamentally as the need to create short-term memory.
Okay.
Okay. So as you well described, we are sort of barreling through our waking lives, just getting shit done, having
Right.
experiences and seeing, smelling, tasting, touching, hearing, speaking, all sorts of data. And the brain is collecting all of this as impulses, literal electronic impulses of experience in the brain.
Okay.
So that's just a mass of data that if the brain did not organize that, we would cease to function.
Mm.
So the brain is then lighting up. The neofrontal cortex, which is the front part of the brain that is active during the day, is just as active in REM sleep as waking life.
Mm.
Like not in the pre-sleep stages. The brain gets quiet, the waves synchronize, it all gets very sort of quiet and flowing for the first 4 phases of sleep. And then we drop into REM and bam, the frontal cortex lights up. And guess what we're doing? We're reliving everything we experienced during the day. So you use some language that I absolutely think is accurate. It might not be the language I would first go to, but the idea of like processing things that we couldn't process during the day. Yes, we are reviewing everything that happened. And then the mind is in there going, ooh, this is important. Let's make this a memory. And oh, look at all that. Not important. Throw that into the abyss. That's extraneous. So if we're then doing all of that, we could call that emotional processing. But either way, we couldn't wake up the next day and bring in new material if we didn't clear out all of the old.
Wow.
And
So it's a
that
filtering
describes,
system.
yes, absolutely. And that describes both the metabolic waste that if we didn't clear it out, our brains would respond to that. Have you ever like lost a night of sleep or maybe 2 and heard things or weird sounds happen?
Yes.
You think
Yes.
someone's texting you all day because you hear the ghost of your text sound?
Yeah.
That's your brain responding to metabolic waste as stimulus.
Wow.
So now imagine 3, 4, 5, 6 nights of sleep deprivation. Now you're developing a psychotic break.
Oh my gosh.
Right?
Yeah.
So you also have to form the short-term memory to function as well. So both structural functions of REM sleep, the clearing out of the waste and the forming of memory, are not at all mystical or multidimensional. And science will say then, therefore, dreams have no meaning, which is, of course,
Okay.
nonsense. Well, that's the
Right.
hubris of science.
Right.
You know, it's like when they discovered the centers of the brain that light up through meditation and prayer. science was like, there is no such thing as this. It's just the brain lighting up. And it's like, no, schmuck.
I love that.
Lighting up of the brain is what happens when someone's in communication with existence itself.
Exactly. I love that. Yes.
Right.
Oh, wow.
Right. So there's all of this technical stuff going on in the dream state that if it were not happening, we would die.
The brain truly is like a computer that can be like
Yes.
overstimulated.
Overstimulated.
Yeah.
Less functional because you've done too much with it.
Wow. Yeah. That's crazy that the brain can actually, that's doing that at night. I love that.
Yeah. And for my money, as someone who really sits astride the midpoint between science and mysticism, I call myself half scientist, half mystic.
Right.
I think that the idea that the brain is doing structural, rationally understandable, and important mechanisms during sleep doesn't detract at all from the idea that we are in connection with a sort of multidimensionality of us. For me, the science proof extends to the mystical.
Right.
That it's just as valid then, therefore, to say dreams are a portal into another dimension that might even be more us than us in waking life.
Wow. Well, I've been going through your book, and so to the listeners, Dr. Michael wrote a book called Psychic Dreamer, and he has a lot of interviews in there from different clients and breaks down those dreams that his clients had. And actually, when I have been reading through it, I was literally thinking a question like, well, what does this mean? Whatever. And then you would give an example, and it was almost like very similar to the client's dream. And I was like, oh my God, that answered it. So this is going to sound so absolutely crazy. I wasn't even going to talk about it, but here I am. I'm going to talk about it.
Love it.
I had a dream somewhere within the last 4 years with Donald Trump. Okay.
Okay. Great.
But it was like kind of like sexual, but nothing sexual happened. But there was like innuendos in there, right? Like, and I'm sitting there, I'm like, oh my God, like he had his hand on my thigh or something like that. We were like, I remember we were sitting at a table having drinks, whatever, some kind of bigwig thing. And in my dream, though, I remember thinking, oh man, he's got his hand on my thigh. Why? Like I wasn't necessarily feeling it, but at the same time, I was like, it's Donald Trump. It's like so weird. So in the book, you gave an example of somebody having a dream. I think about, maybe it was Bill Clinton or somebody had a presidential dream. And you had said something around the fact that the president in that dream was representing her masculine energy or something like that.
Yeah.
So what in the world does that even mean?
Okay.
Why was I dreaming about Donald Trump?
Don't worry that you're dreaming of Trump. It doesn't have, nefarious meaning.
Okay.
Right. First of all, anything sexual or even foreplay-ish oriented, like, him touching your thigh is not like intercourse.
Right. It wasn't that.
It's certainly, sexual. It's a sexual advance. Yeah. So remember that we're in dream consciousness. We're not in waking life.
Right.
So there's all sorts of things that in waking life would be both terrible and even illegal that in the dream state has greater meaning that's actually quite affirmative. And sex is one of them. Sex is ultimately about union and joining together, right?
Okay.
So even in the real life world, that the ultimate goal of sex is coming together in intimacy, for the most part.
Right.
But in the purity of it, it's about It's about, so symbolically, intercourse would be about integration of masculine and feminine principle. And the dreamer having a sex in a dream with someone that they would never have sex with in waking life can be interpreted as a need to stimulate or find or make more available the qualities of that person inside of them. I'll give you a real clear example of
Okay, because I'm lost.
like from an office. A woman had a dream about having sex with a coworker she would never have. She was flipped out. She found me. We started talking about it. As I sort of pushed a little bit more in to what was going on with her in her work environment, we found out that she was not a very comfortable public speaker, and she had a big presentation coming. The guy that she dreamed of having sex with was somebody who was very articulate and good at public speaking. The dream of
Oh,
sex with him was to stimulate the part of her that would be good at speaking, to bring it
get
forward,
out.
because she needed that in her
So
waking.
I was dreaming about Donald Trump trying to bring out some of my Donald Trump energy.
Well, think about what Donald Trump is. He's like the height of narcissism,
Yeah,
and the United States is kind of a narcissistic country.
right.
And we are sort of in this divide right now where we're sort of looking at what is America. And there's a version of America that is just as valid as the one that I might lean toward, because there are millions of people who would prefer that America if they could have it.
Right.
So Donald Trump represents that level of powerful narcissistic leadership that would sort of be a strongman winner.
Right. Okay.
Right? We're not talking about how you feel about Trump in waking life. We're talking about the avatar of Trump.
Right.
Is the unstoppable, narcissistically driven, masculine power that by touching your thigh is trying to stimulate your action and your movement. Legs, we always look at the body part. What does the body part do? Thighs are about strength of movement, walking powerfully where you want to go. If he was touching your feet, it might be about being grounded or what direction you want to walk in, right? If he touched your arm, it might be about creating strength to create things. If he touched your fingers, it might be literally about your creative impulses, because the fingers create. You see where I'm going with all of this?
I do. Can I give you one more example?
Absolutely.
I just woke up this morning. This just happened last night or whatever happened. I woke up with a dream that I was like in like this warehouse. So we got to look at the location. I know that's important.
Yep.
Like up in like a loft area, and there's a bunch of us hiding under blankets because there was people that wanted to shoot us. Okay. And I was kind of like leaned up against, this is going to sound nuts, but I used to watch General Hospital, and there's Sonny Corinthos, who was a mobster, but a good guy, even though he was a mobster. Anyway, he was kind of like my boyfriend, it felt like, and he was trying to protect me, and he like went to kill the people, whatever, but that was the end of the dream. But I don't know why Sonny Corinthos was in there. So is that more masculine energy again?
Absolutely. He's the savior of the dream, right? So then, because everybody in the dream landscape is an aspect of you, then
right. Okay, so all people are me.
Well, that is one way of looking at a dream. In other words, we could look at I call this the inner circle and the outer circle of interpretation, right? You can interpret the people in your dream, especially if you know them, as reflecting your relationship with them in waking life. I don't ever really do that. I only look at the sort of depth psychology, Jungian perspective of what would this dream landscape be reflecting if we thought of everybody in the dream as an aspect of self.
Okay.
Right? So like even the people you were hiding with,
Yeah.
they're all your fearful thoughts.
Oh, there's a lot of
Fearful
us.
thoughts. And what are these people doing? Nothing. They're not
Nothing.
moving. They have no agency. They're not being powerful. They're sitting, hiding, huddling because they're afraid. The warehouse tells us we're not in your like movement of life. You're someplace where we store stuff, right? We store things in warehouses. They're like preparatory consciousness, not activated consciousness. You see?
Yes.
So you're in a place where you're not in movement and action out in the world. You're where you store all of your resources to potentially be powerful. And you're having a fearful moment. So you're in all of your fearful thoughts, all of the parts of you that agree life is scary.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And the person who saves you isn't your goodness. It isn't your love. It isn't your softness and light. It's a part of you that knows how to take masculine principle and be powerful with it, bad guy, but who's really a good guy.
Right.
So Sonny's the part of you that can set boundaries, say no, be powerful, change other people's sort of directions in an aggressive, assertive manner, but still basically be a nice person.
Yeah. Wow.
So every little symbol in the dream tells me a story, and then I reflect that story back, and hopefully there's some level of identification, which happens most of the time.
Wow. Okay, so I love all that. My next question is, so you talk a lot about, well, lucid dreaming. We could talk about that in a second, but that dream was definitely a weird, I feel like sometimes I'm on an acid trip when I wake up because I'm like, none of this made sense, right? But then I got to the part in your book where you're talking about past lives, which I absolutely love that concept. And for a past life, let me see if I got this correct, if I understood what you're saying. Like a past life dream is more like a movie, like where everything, because I had one a couple years ago and I still remember what I was wearing, and it was like in a saloon type thing, and it just was. So anyway, can you explain what a past life dream is?
So let me start by saying this. I have no authoritative bent on any of this. I don't know. I don't know any more than anybody else knows. But I have spent a lifetime talking to dreamers. And if you go all the way back to my teenage years and young adult years, even though I wasn't a technically, professional spiritual teacher, dream interpreter, I have spoken to thousands and thousands and thousands of dreamers. I have had the experience myself of listening to a dream and just having the intuitive voice that's inside of me that I know very well say in my mouth, this feels like a past life dream. So then that caused me to examine, when have I said that and why? It's always when there's a kind of cogency. There's a cogency of environment. I say it looks like a movie from this perspective. A movie is likely to be about a bunch of characters who exist at a certain time, and it follows them, and they dress a certain way, and they live a certain place, and they act a certain way. Even if the movie takes place over many years, it's a world unto itself. Most typical dreams are chaotic as crazy. They go all over the place. They change genres and shapes, but some dreams don't. Some dreams feel like a movie, like you're wearing a certain kind of clothes, or you're in a kind of a saloon that looks like a Western town, and yet the whole dream takes place there in a manner that resembles a movie more than a typical dream.
Well, and the reason why I remember it is because something really tragic had happened to me. Not to get too in depth, but there was these very high influential men that I think there's 4 or 5 of them, and they took me into a back room. And when I woke up, my heart was racing. When I was in there, I remember trying to negotiate my way out of that room. But this was years ago when I had it, but I can remember what I was wearing, what everybody else was wearing, that those people had money, that I was a woman and they were going to take advantage of me. It was all these. So when I woke up, it was I was there, I was there.
So I have some sort of perspectives about such an experience. I guess you could call them my beliefs.
Yeah.
One is, I wouldn't run around saying that we've been other people in past lives, because it's a mystery None of us really know. And I
Right.
haven't personally been sort of downloaded visions that would give me authority around this. And I trust that some people are. I'm not.
Hmm.
So I can't sit here and say, I think we've been past life. I'm more
Right.
inclined to believe that we've been everybody than
Yeah.
one sort of lineage. What is absolutely, I think, so, whether we've been these people in the past or not, I do believe that in the life that we're in, that we can tap into other existences that are in the infinite sort of illusion of time, doesn't exist, so we can connect to them, that relate thematically to our current life. I certainly have
Mm.
had my past life regressions. I had two of
Yeah.
them in my 30s, and man, did the past life I connected to, the conflict in it, related to the conflict in my like 27-year-old life. And that
Yeah.
to me was the value, right, of tapping into that past life idea. So, something I know about the healing of PTSD is that there's parts of us that are stuck back
Yeah.
at
Yeah.
places where trauma happened. Innocuous traumas too, not just the big ones, right?
Hmm.
So healing an old trauma is a little bit like revisiting it. That's why I teach a lot of shadow classes, because you can't heal an old traumatic wound from childhood unless you re-experience the pain. And there's a way that you can re-experience that pain, be with it in a kind of loving, conscious manner. And the
Yeah.
net result is the trauma releases from your 7-year-old self that's holding it. And that little part of your soul comes snapping back to your
Yes.
current existence, and a healing has happened.
I
Well,
literally just did a podcast on that. Yes.
okay, got it. So you're with me. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
You believe that this is so. And by the way,
Yeah.
what I just described is would be agreed upon in the world of psychology, right? People who are
Okay.
healing trauma and somatic healing. What if this happens into past lives? What
Right.
if you didn't visit a deeply traumatizing physical injurious attack, that by visiting it in the dream, you were sending that experience a little bit of love and conscious awareness, and retrieving a piece of your psyche slash soul that wasn't in you because it was stuck
Right.
there?
Right.
Now, I don't know if this is true or not.
I like the thought of
Half
it.
scientist, half mystic. I can describe it mystically and say, I think this is going on, but I sit in a chair that forces me to have to also say, I don't know, maybe, right?
Yeah.
Because it's a mystery.
Well,
This
one of
this suits me. I think a lot of people like to live fully in the magical thinking of their spiritual, and they're not wrong. It's
right.
just not my style.
Right. Well, it kind of made sense. Even so, like I said, I had this dream like 3 or 4 years ago, and around that time, I was questioning like why I do feel kind of nervous around men I don't know. And it was to the point where sometimes, like in my 20s, I specifically remember at times walking down the street on like the sidewalk or whatever. And there are times where I'm like, look over my shoulder, like somebody's behind me. Or if a guy was like running like past me, I would like almost go into a ball.
Right, right.
I have
Wow.
no reason to think that way because nothing really had
Right.
happened to me to make me be to that degree where I'm hiding on the street. And so I've always kind of in the back of my mind wondered why I feel this way about men I don't know. And then I had that dream. And I can't say that it cured me, but I don't necessarily think so much about it anymore.
Well, and there very well may be that the experience of freedom that is coming is possible now, even
Yeah.
if it didn't happen as an instant cure.
Yeah.
Like, it's not a switch that got flipped on or off,
Mhm.
but
Mhm.
you crossed a threshold with that dream that may be shedding light on why you had this pervasive sort of, ongoing
Yeah.
inner fear mechanism that's maybe greater than you would expect. But it's possible that slowly and gently for the rest of your embodied existence, that will trouble you less and less and less because of the dream.
Well, and another thing that I just connected right now talking to you, I've been keeping a dream journal, like I said, for the last probably 4 years. And when I first like had my spiritual awakening, like a massive one in 2020, like I've always been kind of spiritual, but not to this degree. And so that's when I started to keep my dream journal, and I just wanted to know all the ins and outs, and I started doing shadow work and inner
Mhm.
child work and all that. If you look at my dream journal now, like because sometimes I'll revisit the old stuff that I wrote down, almost every single one of them take place in my childhood home. And I just and I didn't know why, but it had to have been because I was working on
Yeah, yeah,
myself
yeah. You know,
because I don't have them anymore.
a spiritual awakening, I don't think a spiritual awakening bumps us up to something we weren't.
Yeah, I
It
agree.
restores us to something we were born to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then life and generational trauma
Yep.
and parents who doing their best start
Yep.
forming us and take our original expansiveness that's promised in our DNA and for me in our natal chart. And
Yeah.
we have to undo all of the reforming that our environment did that ultimately clamped us down and kept us
Yes.
from being as fully expressed as we're capable of. And then we just move through life accepting that. And then
Yep.
we keep taking on the squeezing structures as if they are us. And then something can happen like a crisis or a pandemic or
Right. Right.
something that gives you the perfect storm to have the explosive spiritual awakening. And
Mm-hmm.
again, like I said, I'm repeating myself, but it bears repeating. The spiritual awakening doesn't amplify and elevate you to something higher than you. It just restores you to you. And of course, your dreams would be taking you back to the place in your history where the most constraints were placed upon you
Mm.
so that you can work them out in the place where only they can get worked out, which is in the unconscious, because that's where they live. You can go to therapy and talk about them.
Mm-hmm.
Take you about 20 years to use your talking
Right.
to bust through that shadow. I think everybody needs to go to therapy for a couple of years because you need to know the lay of the land. You need to know the structure of the wounds. You need to know the craziness of your parents, and you need to know. But
Right.
once you know enough, then stop talking and get into somatic work, inner child
Mm.
work, mirror work, shadow work, using the body, opening the body's way of
Yes.
stuckness and holding on. And dream work is a gorgeous part of that because by writing down your dreams, you're telling your unconscious that you're interested. And then the unconscious will spread and give you more.
You talk about this in your book, but for the listener, are there ways to make yourself be more prone to having dreams that you're going to remember? Like maybe a lucid dream or any dreaming, really.
Well, if you're somebody who identifies with the idea that I don't remember my dreams, this is what you want to do. Number one, intention is everything, and it's wildly more powerful than even just like the description. There's two things I hate. I hate the idea that the language of setting intention sounds sort of namby-pamby.
Yeah.
By the same token, I hate the word placebo effect.
I'm not a fan of it either. And I
Well,
want
it
you
is
to,
a diminishing moniker. It says, oh,
yeah,
just the placebo effect. Meanwhile, you've got scientific proof that all you have to do is tell somebody a healing will happen and the fucking healing happens. That's a miracle. And it's verified. You can't prove what's behind it, so science will ignore it. But if the
yeah,
studies over and over and over again show that 30% of people will feel less depressed taking a sugar pill because they think it,
right,
you can dismiss that if you want, but oh my God,
right,
you're dismissing the most powerful thing that is so about us, which was we are that creative.
right, right.
Like so the power of intention is way, way, way greater than most people assume. So you start with that. You set the intention before you go to bed. I will remember my dreams. The more sort of grounded you use, that intention. In other words, writing it down in your dream
Mm-hmm.
journal is more powerful than thinking it.
Right, right.
Saying it out loud would be more powerful than thinking it. Writing it in your dream journal. Hey, higher self, I want to remember my dreams in the morning. Okay. Then you've got to have the recording device next to your bed. You might think you're going to remember that vivid dream that happens at 2 in the morning, but you never do because, the waking mind, eradicates that sort of. So you got to have the journal by your bed. And writing is a more direct activation of the unconscious. So I do encourage people in this digital age, get a notebook and a pencil.
Just do it.
Just do it. But the third piece of direction that I give that I've never heard anybody else talk about is, well, actually, that's not true. For the first time ever, I sat in a podcast promoting the book, a shaman woman who had the same. So the first person I ever heard who said this: go to the journal the next morning, no matter what.
Okay.
Write something down, even if it's, I don't remember anything from last night. And then maybe wait a second and then go about your day. It's that third act of going to the journal that I think signals the unconscious mind to keep the window of awareness open a little bit longer. One of the reasons why, I don't know if this is scientifically accurate, but I like to, it's descriptively sort of accurate, that we are visual people and dreams are very visual. But our visual capacity during our waking life is with our eyes open and a part of our brain that's working with our eyes. But that's not active in dreams, where our eyes are closed.
Right?
We're experiencing the visuals of the dream state, not in one section of the brain, but many sections of the brain all working and fired up at the same time. So that we are less likely to remember those visual coalesced images because they're not being held as solid images in one place in the brain. Once the brain starts to function as a waking experience, even before we are aware that we're waking up, all of that connectivity that was the dream content starts to separate, and then we can't remember it with our rational waking mind. Right? It's like trying to describe a fog lifting.
Right.
Right.
Do we dream in color?
There's this thing about people say, I dreamt in color. The ipso facto of that isn't that other dreams are in black and white. It's just that some dreams feel very vivid, and color might be the vividity that the dreamer experiences to cause them to say, oh, the dream was in color. It doesn't mean that other dreams are not in color. It just means that a vivid dream where color is powerful is going to land on the dreamer as significant, and therefore the dream will be described as colorful. But it doesn't mean that the dream before it and the dream after it was in black and white. It's not 1963 anymore.
Because sometimes when I wake up, there are one or two things that were the brightest red or something, like a purse. Or when I was pregnant with my son, he's 15, but when I was pregnant with him, I was about 5 months pregnant. I literally had a dream of a calendar that said July at the top of it, and it had circled in red 24. Okay. But his due date wasn't until August 8th. So, but I woke up and I was like, that red was so red. I went downstairs and on my calendar, I circled it
in red.
Yes. And I said, that's when we're having Cameron. And so my parents were spending the night on July 24th, actually, 23rd. And I was like, well, I'll see you guys in the early morning, 2 a.m., whatever, because I'm going to be having Cameron. And my dad's like, yeah, okay, it's your first baby.
Sure.
It's your first baby. You think you're going to go 2 weeks early? And I was like, that's what my dream said. So anyway, lo and behold, I had Cameron on July 24th. Not
of course you did.
In August. So I think the reason why I really remembered that dream so well is because of that red circling on the, I knew that it meant something and it actually happened. Is that not crazy? That's my crazy story.
It's gorgeous crazy. And, welcome to my world. That dream, that dream fits right into the panoply of dreams I've heard that are just equally wackadoodle. For you, it's like, oh my God, this dream is yeah, honey, I've heard 5,000 people's version of that dream. The reason why I think you remembered it was because your soul was not only trying to communicate something to you that it knew, i.e. when Cameron was coming,
but
your spiritual awakening might have happened in 2020, but like I said, it wasn't creating something that didn't already exist.
Mm-hmm.
So what
Yeah.
I would postulate was that I can't do math in my head, but 2024 minus 15 in that year,
Yeah.
whatever year Kevin was born,
It was 2008.
you were as intuitive and connected and available to this information as you are now, but your embodiment was still encased in the
So
old
true.
structures that would keep you from being able to operate that way in your waking life, but your sleeping life didn't hold back.
Right.
I would even say the red, when I hear a color in a dream, I always go to, well, what's the color of the chakra of the 7 chakras of the body, which relates to the
Right.
spectrum of, red, orange, yellow,
Yep.
green, blue, indigo, violet, Roy G. Biv. Well, that connects to the 1st through 7th chakras. And the root chakra is red.
Yeah.
Right. So red and the root chakra is all about like your absolute survival, needs met, grounded. And
Safety.
so the sacral chakra is the chakra through which you gave birth, which is orange.
Right.
Red would be the like, let's hunker down, be grounded and ready for a life-changing event.
Whoa, that's crazy.
That's the root.
Yes.
Red is also a color of stop, which to me is also root chakra. Root chakra is where we know, are we safe? Can we move? Do we stop?
Yeah.
Do we go? So, of course you gave birth on July 24th.
I know. So, every once in a while too, like I pay attention to like I'll say like a color or so yes, now I'm going to really associate that with the chakras, but
I would encourage that simply because there is this structure in the world of New Age thought that we have these 7 energy centers and they connect to these colors, and anything that can give us a place to go, I think is valuable. So I always go to the chakras first. And if it doesn't yield a result, we might have to think about other elements to a color. But it's rare that the color and the quality of the chakra that it's associated with isn't germane. So I would encourage you, anytime a color seems prominent, go to the chakra system.
I love that. Anything about numbers? Because every once in a while I'll get like a number where I remember.
I would say that because I'm not a numerologist, I don't know a whole lot. I mean, outside of, I know deeply the meaning of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. In fact, I have a cute little elegant, way I describe that, because there's, just as each color has a meaning through the chakras, each of the numbers of 1 to 9 has a meaning. I'll do it. It's like, so 1 is the singularity and existence. When it splits off, we know each other. That's 2. Once we have 2, those 2 can create a third, a transcendent third, mother, father, child. That's 3. Once we've mastered that kind of creativity, we can build foundation. That's 4. Once we've built a foundation, we can express and be creative. That's what 5 represents. Once we've mastered self-expression and creativity, we can join with others and share life. That's what 6 means. Once we have mastered sharing life with others, we can look up and consider God. That's 7. Once we look up and see God at 7, what do we understand? Life is abundant and flows in cycles. Infinity. 8. Once we've learned infinity, we're done. 9.
We're done.
So right there, I've just given a masterclass on the simple distillation of the meaning behind the numbers that all of numerology is based on. I've also extended my knowledge of numerology. Like that's not true. I mean, I know how to figure out the numerology of a name or a date or a birth.
Right.
But you always distill in numerology back to the single digit. So if I was hearing a dream that had a number in it, I would be going to the numerology.
Got
if it was a double digit or more, I would add the digits up down to the numerology. And that's where I would go. And if it didn't yield a result that was satisfying, maybe we'd look at something else. But usually the numerology speaks to us.
Gosh. All right. So basically what I've learned through this entire hour of conversation is you really, when you do have a dream, definitely write it down and just keep breaking down each individual thing.
Yes. I'll say this. Having the dream and not remembering it is still dream work. Your friends who don't remember their dreams are still going into the underbelly of their psyche, processing and healing, waking up the next day with short-term memory and clean brain and ready to meet the world again. And I do believe that the wisdom that dreaming brings us is for all of us,
Okay.
human and animal. We
Yeah.
are processing and dreaming so that we can meet life in our waking state. Just remembering a dream amplifies the value of the ongoing interaction between conscious mind and conscious awareness and the unconscious. Sharing it with another human being is the next sort of step up of value. There's great value in sharing dreams. It's an intimate act. It's really revealing of something internal to you, to somebody else, yummy and powerful. The most powerful way to be with a dream is to respond to it with creativity. Draw a dream image.
Whoa.
Dance it out around your living room. Write a poem about the dream. The unconscious speaks to us in the language of symbol. It responds when we give it symbols back. So drawing that dream, if somebody is terrified by a recurring nightmare that keeps coming, I'd be like, draw it. It'll change. Your unconscious.
Or like, say you had a dream about spaghetti. Have spaghetti that night?
Have some spaghetti. Absolutely. Make it a ritual, right? So I always like to point this out, that there's this hierarchy of value you can get from working with your dreams that includes the person who doesn't remember their dreams.
Wow. So everyone could be doing this work and would benefit from it.
Yes. And I think the essential meaning of the book is that if you want to be more intuitive and connected to the sense of flow in your waking life, one of the best ways to do that is to create a rich experience of relating to your dreams and your sleep life in a sacred way, because we are practicing in dreams what it's like to let the rational mind that doesn't know intuition to quiet down, which it goes to sleep, and then we're free to receive imprints from the irrational and the unconscious and the universal mind. We do this every night. It's like a muscle. When we're paying attention to our dreams just by writing them down, I think we are encouraging our instruments to be more intuitive in our waking lives just by visiting the dreams and being conscious of that process.
Wow. So perfectly said. And I'm totally going to pay even more attention to my dreams. Yeah. Thank you for that. So Dr. Michael Lennox, how can people find you?
MichaelLennox.com is the website. It's just like my name is spelled, MichaelLennox.com. And that's just where to go. You can find my social media presence there. The books that I have written are, linked there as well. And the classes that I teach and the astrology readings that I do, everything that you need to find out about me is at MichaelLennox.com.
Yes. Well, Michael, thank you so much for being here today and explaining even just like a snippet of what dreams are and, how powerful they can be. I know that I am forever changed now just from this conversation. So thank you so much for being here with me.
Thank you for having me. This was a joy.
Yes. And to the listener, I will see you next time. Thanks for listening.